Okay.
Got it.
I think you're okay.
All right, let's see. So make sure I get the right screen. All right. One last item. I have 3 screens going, so it's
Gee, I only have 2. My God.
yeah, as software developer, you know, we're geeky.
I know.
All right, so I thought I would share what my knowledge of what I've gained over the years with filters for astrophotography. So we'll take you through a whole bunch of things. Feel free to interrupt and ask questions. So let's go ahead and get started. So as far as an overview, like my expertise comes by this. I'm a trial and error guy. Unfortunately, I'm not, I'm not a Mark Christensen who does the math and then picks the right thing.
Oh, you're supposed to do that?
Yeah, right.
Oh.
And just to prove my point, here's the filters I have owned.
Wow.
And some I still own. So L Pro, L Enhanced twice, L Extreme, so on and so forth, and then various wavelengths of for filters, which we'll get into. So I can tell you some filters not to get if you can, but most of the filters are generally okay. So I like to compare what you want out of a filter kind of to like a radio station. So sometimes when you're tuning through, especially AM, you get to a station and you hear what you want to hear, but then there's static on the line, or you hear multiple stations at once and you have to do some fine tuning to get the proper band as you like it. And this kind of similar experience to what we experience with, astrophotography. So we're going to be catching static in the form of sky glow or light pollution or, those type of things. So the main types of signal that we want to capture in our astrophotography are, obviously red, green, blue. And then there's a few of the narrow band kind of things, hydrogen beta, and we'll get into each of these and what is good about them. HA, hydrogen alpha, oxygen 3, and even sulfur and acetal, which I couldn't tell you what acetal is in a wavelength or what objects they are, but apparently we do capture some of that. The things we have to fight against, of course, is the air glow, mercury vapor lights, sodium vapor lights. So that's why we use filters to cut those things out of our pictures. So the main types of signal we deal with are broadband and the narrow band. The broadband, of course, is our red, green, blue. That's the kind of the main spectrum of stuff we can capture. And then the narrow band, of course, is the big 4. Really, it's the big 3 with an asterisk to H beta, which we'll talk about later. So broadband filters, what are they really good for? What type of objects? Well, galaxies, star clusters, and nebulae to a point. And their purpose is to remove the human made light and any sky glow that may be happening. So there are different types. We'll talk about those. One example, Mark, someone's trying to get into the meeting, but not being let in. Actually, that's Greg, I think. There's no waiting room, right?
Yep, that's you.
There he is.
There he is. Okay.
There you go.
Hey, Greg,
Hi, Greg.
we let you in. I tried to keep you out, but what can I do?
Yeah, well, the waiting rooms are great. So yeah, good deal.
Yeah, it's a green room, so you had a lot of, food and stuff. Okay.
Absolutely.
All right. So continuing on, one thing that is really important for one-shot color cameras is dealing with the infrared, and you basically want to cut those out from at least your deep, well, actually probably both planetary and deep sky. So here's and CMOS, or you're talking about regular one-shot color astronomy camera or a DSLR or SLR, whatever you want to call them nowadays. So here's the no filter versus the IR cut. So you can see it's really taken out a lot of the detail that you can capture, as well as some of the good color. So narrowband filters. Basically, the narrowband is really going after one type of object versus the broadband, and that's the nebulae. And its purpose really is to capture mainly the three big bands, or the three big hitters of of the narrowband: hydrogen alpha, oxygen 3, and sulfur 2. And so by going narrow, and exactly what that filter means is it's taking, instead of doing things on a broad, it's taking it just a small shots in the spectrum. And I'll have some pictures to show you what that is. But it removes any kind of human light sky glow. There's just, you don't have to worry about that so much, with some minor exceptions. So some of the filter manufacturers that I, at least the big ones that I know of, are these guys. Probably the most popular one out of all of these is Optilong, but all of these I own some Beta. I own Beta LRGB. They're really nice. Chroma is really expensive, so Astrodon is expensive, and the Radiant's like, forget about it, for me anyway. There's also some cheaper ones which you can get, these guys, but I really think you're going to get what you pay for. It'll help, but when you compare it to some of the more expensive filters, you'll see the big difference, in your image quality. So here's just to give you an idea of the money difference, right? So, light pollution filter Gorski is $27. The Chroma LRGB set is $1,400. And then I think here's just Astrodon's 5 nanometer H alpha is $600. So it's, it gets crazy, some of the prices.
And as you get a narrower band hydrogen alpha, the more expensive they get.
Yeah. And there's good reason to want that, even if you don't want to pay it.
There's also a good reason not to get the narrower band.
Well, that's true too. We'll probably talk about all those different things. Yep. So some of the terms, if you're doing research on a particular filter, you want to take a look at: band pass, bandwidth, surface quality, and probably the biggest ones you want to know about are bandwidth and transmission percentage. Because you could have a great bandwidth, but if it's only transmitting 50% of the HA, that's not where you want to be. So anyway, just keep those terms in mind as you're looking at certain filters. We'll talk about why each of these are important and what they do. So in the one-shot color world, the big interest that we have is around multiband passes. So here's an example of in the 500 nanometer wavelength. That's the oxygen 3. Here you have HA, and this is sulfur, between the 650 and 700. And then there's other, I think over here I think in here's H beta. Anyway, but what you see in the orange lines are the light pollution spectrums. So all the multiband pass filters, they're trying to eliminate, as much as that as they can. So what you'll see, plus or minus, but you'll see basically this kind of wavelength for any kind of multiband pass filter. And I shouldn't say it's just for nebulae, because it's the general light pollution filters are doing the same thing. So here's a bunch of I guess these are all optolongs. So when you look at the L Pro, this is a general purpose, and it's a very good filter, as are others that are equivalent in other manufacturers, but it's very good at combating light pollution. And in turn, when you use it, you have to image longer, because it's just letting through the bands that you want. So for me, like if I'm shooting from here at home, the best I can do with my color camera is about 30 seconds before I get the sky glow washing everything out. But with the L Pro, I can do about 3 minutes before it's right on the edge there of letting in some sky glow. So
the Optolong L Pro is a single shot camera filter.
correct. Yes,
Okay.
One shot color.
Okay.
Actually, everything on the screen is one shot color
Okay.
filters. So the next thing that companies came out with is this duo band pass. So it's letting in hydrogen alpha and oxygen 3, and in some of the cases, like the L enhance, is letting through the H beta, and we'll talk about that a little later.
So quick question, Andy, are these clip where you put it in the camera, or are these on the lens for the lens?
It can be either or.
Okay.
Or you can have it in a filter wheel. Any kind of flavor you can imagine, it has it. So
Okay.
1 1/4, 2-inch, inside the DSLR, the internal filters.
How about on for the end of on the lens?
Yeah, if you can get an adapter for a 2-inch filter, you can do that. Yeah, I've never tried it on the end of the lens, but yeah, I'm not sure.
Okay.
When I was using my DSLR, I had the internal versions of, not these particular ones, but that's what I was using.
Okay.
So we lines that's for sodium.
LED lines, the filters have been getting better at combating the LED too.
So is the LED just a broad spectrum, or is it a line?
Yeah, it's kind of a broad. I think it's. I don't remember for sure, but I think it's right in here. Oh shoot. Right in here.
In there?
But I could be wrong. But I tell you what, my L Pro filter, I don't have really any issues between sodium vapor or LED.
Okay.
As far as I can tell. I'm not speaking from science. I'm just speaking from empirical.
Okay. Well, that's good news.
Yeah. The next version that came out was the L Extreme, and you can see when you compare it to the L Enhance how wide this is. And because it is wider, you have light pollution encroaching a little bit in here when it comes to the H beta band. But now you can see the L extreme is really, it's only getting the O3. And so again, this is something you can shoot longer and longer with, and it does a good job at keeping out the light pollution and sky glow. And then, recently they've come out with this, and I'm using Optilong, but there's all sorts of companies that do these. This is just the ones I know of. So the L Ultimate it's got a 3 nanometer bandwidth on it. So it's even cutting out even more. So there's always some trade-offs between filters. So if you're to shoot, like I couldn't possibly shoot from my house with an IR cut filter. It's like I said, it's 30 seconds, and that's the best I'm going to do. And I don't want to stack 830-second photos. It just take forever. But you can see, the Optilong L Enhance, which of course is a duo band filter. It's not just cutting out the light pollution, but it's capturing this nice nebula in here, as well. And by the way, this is all Alan Dyer's write-up at this. I'll share the PowerPoint with everybody, but this is where I got this from. But if you look at the MB1 it kind of, they didn't take too long to go to this MBZ filter, which seems to be very good. But the L Extreme does a much better job at cutting out the light pollution. And even though it's darker, if you shoot longer, you'll have a better nebula image. But bright stars, it has a problem with. Whereas the IDES MBZ, the bright stars look beautiful. There's no halo around them at all. So there's all these trade-offs. It's like, what do you care about the halo? You know how to process a halo out? These are all the decisions you got to make for yourself. So any questions on this kind of thing at this point? So continuing on with trade-offs. So this is the MBZ filter is better at the stars, but look at the oxygen the L Extreme is pulling in versus the MBZ. So the oxygen's in the blue, right? And you can see this, right? So it's definitely doing a better job with the oxygen. So like I said, you just got to decide what you want.
So the image itself is true color. It's not like a Hubble palette color.
No, this is true. This is one-shot color.
Yeah.
Camera. And Alan Dyer did processing. It's the same exposure time, the same processing. So here's one that I did when I owned both the L Enhance and L Extreme. This was a 28-second exposure time total. And I did the processing exactly the same way in Photoshop. And you can look in here, like the head of the bat here. This is the part of the veil. And look in the L Extreme is just pulling this oxygen in so much better than the L Enhance does, right? So you might conclude that, okay, I want the L Extreme. But there are instances where the L Enhance, I think, does a better overall job for some things, one of which we'll discuss in detail in a bit. Again, and the other thing too is, it's got a little bit more of a background that needs to be taken out from the L Enhance versus the L Extreme. So the big sellers for broadband filters, this is just for light pollution. The L Pro, the IDES has a couple of variations of them. My understanding, I think the D2, which is their latest one, is pretty good. I own a different one. I really struggled with it. It had a green cast. I had trouble getting out of, the filters. And I did own the CLS, and I had that internal to my DSLR, and that worked pretty well too. But that was a heavy green cast as well. I had to fight through. So the Duo Plus filter, folks, here's where it kind of gets interesting, right? So the cheapest of the lot would be the ZWO dual band filters. And it kind of goes in order here. I don't know how much the Antlia costs, so I can't speak to that. But the Radiant Triad is actually, is taking in 3 bands. So it's doing the oxygen 3, the HA plus the sulfur. But this thing costs like $1,000. So, okay. The ZWO is much, much cheaper than these other guys. And the reason why is this. So when you look at the bandwidth around like oxygen 3, 35 nanometers is really, really wide. So it's letting light pollution come in. And you have to deal with that in post-processing. Look at the HA, 15 nanometers is really wide as well. So you're going to get what you pay for. If you want more light pollution cut out, you have to go and get a smaller bandwidth. So the L enhances is, pulling in oxygen 3, the H beta, and HA, which sometimes you want the H beta. L extreme is down to 7 nanometers. The L ultimate is down to 3. So again, and as the bandwidth gets smaller, the price goes higher. That's basically how that works.
So a couple other things, Andy. Let's say you have a dark sky, and you're not worried so much about light pollution as we are in our area, right? So you go to the wider bandwidth, and you can then cut down your exposure time as well, or take the same exposure time and get that much more data.
Yeah, that is correct. My last slide kind of gives you a great example of what dark skies do.
Yeah. Because what I found on the hydrogen alpha narrowband, you've got to take longer or more exposures to get the same signal.
Right.
So there's quite a difference between a 7 and a 3 nanometer band hydrogen alpha, what you have to do to get the image.
Yeah, I don't know. Well, we should talk about that, I guess, now.
Well, one of the things is I found, because I got both. I got one of each. And normally in my red, green, blue filter wheel, that's where I have the wider band. And in the other filter wheel that I have my oxygen and sulfur and hydrogen beta, that's where I have the narrower band. And what I've found on the hydrogen alpha with the same object is the narrower band width is a grainier picture.
Yeah, I think I don't know that we can say for sure with all these, I think
I would say grainier. Let's say sharper. Let's say sharper.
Okay. Yeah, that could be. Yeah, I mean, for me, my O3 filter is much more noisy than the sulfur and the HA.
Right, for sure.
Yeah, but I have found shooting with the 3 nanometers that I am not shooting longer than I did with my 7. I can't explain it, but anyway.
You know what? Maybe we're talking apples and oranges because you're doing it with one shot color.
No, not with.
I'm doing it with a black and white.
No, I mean, when
Yeah.
I'm shooting with the narrowband filters, I'm shooting with mono.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
I have 2 telescopes going usually every night, you know, when I'm out every night. One's just shooting one shot color, one shooting mono.
Gotcha. Okay.
All right, so narrowband imaging is, you know, as you probably have figured out by our discussion, is just a single filter at a time. And generally, most people who do it will use either a filter wheel or a filter drawer. I don't know of too many people that actually stop what they're doing, unscrew the camera, put a new filter in, put it back in, refocus. It's that's a drag.
Actually, I used to do that when
yeah,
I was shooting my 200 millimeter telephoto lens with the S big.
yeah,
And I would have to take the whole thing apart. I ended up buying separate D rings for each filter.
hmm,
And I would take the camera lens off, take the D ring off, put the different D ring on, put
Yeah.
the camera lens back on, a whole big production. Because unfortunately, my old Canon lenses
yeah,
would not hit the back focus
yes,
of the S big camera.
right,
So I could not use a filter wheel.
right.
I was very disappointed when I found that out.
Yeah, so that's a drawback for, you know, this scenario is a drawback, you know. The other implication, of course, is you have to buy, you know, if you're going to shoot LRGB, that's 4 filters. So the L is an IR cut kind of a filter. So, you know, the costs are going up. But the filter wheel, that's more cost, or filter drawers, you know, like I have, you know, I have 2-inch filters, but I have them in filter drawers and I just pop them in and out for my one shot color camera. But, you know, all that, it's all adding up in cost. The type of objects that narrowband is really going after is the nebulae, and we talked about this a little bit. So the question is, why would you want to, right? Well, nebula, you know, narrowband filters, you know, don't pass the street light emissions like we saw on those charts, right? That's kind of obvious, but they do capture greater detail over time than you would with a one-shot color. And they bypass the moonlight, right? So if I'm shooting in HA and sulfur, I don't care how bright the moon is. It can be a full moon. I'm out there shooting. The O3 is the only caveat. And this is affected too by how the bandwidth of the O3 filter. So like when I first started out, I had the 7 nanometer bandwidth O3. And I really couldn't shoot anything with the moon while the moon was out. Now I have the 3 nanometer, I can shoot it when it's 3/4 and not be too concerned about it. But you know, not if the moon's far enough away, so like 20 degrees away. But sometimes it will cause some gradients, and you have to deal with them in post-processing. And here's the other big advantage that I don't think people really understand is, okay, it seems like it would take longer to shoot, you know, through LRGB, right? Or just say, for instance, I'm going to do RGB in with a monochrome camera. Well, and the reality is it would take me longer to collect red light with the one-shot color camera than it would be with the mono with a red filter. And you know why that is, right? So what I have shown here is a Bayer matrix, right? So
Mhm.
that's what we have in our DSLRs, whether they're astronomy or not, because the two greens and a red and a blue matrix is what the eye sees. So that's why they make the sensors the way they do. So, but if I want to pull out red, if I want to pull out nebula with a one-shot color camera, I have to shoot 4 times longer than I would when the monochrome camera with just the red filter. So you see it because there's 4, you know, 4, and it's not pixels. What are these? Is it pixels in the Bayer matrix?
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, so 4 pixels, only one's red, right? If the mono is saying all 4 of them are red. So for me, if I'm just want to shoot RGB, I only need 30 minutes of each with my mono camera.
I
If
have a
I'm
question.
yeah, go ahead.
Is that why some people have problems with too much green?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah.
I think so too. Okay.
Yeah. So, you know, if I'm shooting the same object with one-shot color, it's usually about 3 hours, 2 to 3 hours, right? So it takes longer to get the colors you want, you know, out of the one-shot color. So that's you know, again, that's the trade-off. The simplicity of one-shot color is wonderful, right? And there are times I don't want to do mono, you know, when I'm shooting. It's just like, let me just take my little scope out, one-shot color, and that's all I want to do tonight. So again, it's all the trade-offs that you want to deal with.
So I don't know if you're going to cover the actual physical process of it, but one of the things I found out was the sequence of taking red, green, blue in the sky.
Oh, really?
Because if you start out, let's say you start out at right after sunset, right, and you're setting up, and you want to do something from the eastern horizon to the zenith. Let's say an hour on each channel, red, green, blue. So what I normally do is start with red because that's lower in the sky, and that's more of the red light comes through, and then shoot green and then blue up top.
Oh, that makes sense.
Don't shoot blue don't start with blue because the blue light's not coming through the atmosphere. And in fact, if you want to do a narrow band like I do hydrogen alpha first, then red, green, blue, I'll shoot the hydrogen alpha first.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah,
then red, green, blue.
That's really
and
good.
if I do it right, like let's say out at Scott's and I plan my night correctly, I can do that without flipping the meridian, throughout the meridian flip, if I do it right.
Yeah.
So it's kind of like we talked before, Andy, you know, planning your evening and planning where the target is. Okay, how am I going to shoot this tonight? Now, sometimes what I'll do is just shoot the red, green, blue, do the meridian flip, and then do the hydrogen alpha. Because I want to be sure that I get the red, green, blue, the results of those, so that with the guiding and everything I don't have to reframe it, right? With the meridian flip. And if I flip to the other side and then do the hydrogen alpha and it doesn't work out so good, okay, I still have a red, green, blue result. I don't have a hydrogen alpha, red, green, flip, blue. Does that make sense? See what I'm saying?
A little does. It does, yeah. I know with, like, you know, and maybe this is kind of a side discussion, but like when I use Nina, it has the even when you do the flip, it automatically does the recentering for you. Is that what the issue is? Or
yeah, I'm just saying that I'm trying to remove any error that could come up.
Yeah, okay.
Because let's say you flip it over and something doesn't work.
Yeah.
Okay, now I'm stuck with with no blue channel.
Yeah, that is true. You're
You know,
absolutely
that's
right, 'cause-
all I'm saying is I'm trying to eliminate
Yeah.
these error possibilities. Because, okay, so now I put in 3 hours, do my flip, and I can't get the blue channel.
Yeah.
Now I've wasted my 3 hours. At
That's a
least if
really
I
good-
took red, green, blue, I got 3 hours worth of stuff.
Yeah.
And if it didn't work, okay, I'll go on to something else. You know?
Yeah, good. Yeah, that's a good discussion. Yeah, good point, because even though Meridian flips are handled pretty well with software, there are times when I go out there and I realize it didn't flip and it just stalled.
Well, the thing is,
So-
let's say your scope's not balanced just right. You know, you
Yeah,
flip it over, and now it's struggling to guide on the other side. You know, there's all kinds of things that could affect that.
Yeah, very good. That's a really good point. Okay, so we'll go back to the wavelengths we like to capture. You know, we've talked about sulfur, we talked about hydrogen alpha and oxygen. And I know this is something that is near and dear to Greg's heart, right? But one of the things we may be interested in capturing is H beta, and the reason for that is something like the horsehead is rich in H beta, right? There's not, and here you see the Californian nebula, which I wasn't aware of until I researched it tonight. That it is pretty rich in H beta as well. So there's not a lot of objects that are rich in H beta, but if I use the L extreme on this, it'll look good. But if I use the L enhance, it's going to come out better on these objects. So again, that's the trade-off thing you have to decide with your filters. And that's why when I showed you my opening filters that I've owned, that's why I ended up having the L enhanced twice, because I sold it and then I said, oh, no, I wish I still had it. And I bought it again. So. Yeah, so, okay. So I want to talk a little bit about the colors, right? Because the interesting thing is when you're shooting in narrowband and doing colors, it's not really mapping to real color, right? So if you look at the HA and S2, they're both in the red spectrum. So how do you map that, right? And then the O3 is really kind of in the green. So what they did with the Hubble palette was say, okay, let's make the sulfur red. We're going to move the HA over to the green, and the green, you know, the oxygen 3 is close to blue, so we'll shove it over to blue. So that's kind of why, you know, you have the Hubble palette equaling this. So when you see pictures with all sorts of versions of colors, there's really no right or wrong way to do it. Because it's all interpretation based on these band passes, right? So sometimes I like to flip these around and put HA in the red. So it's just, the point is, if they ask you if narrowband can never be true color, right? Because it doesn't map to red, green, blue. Okay, so we did start to talk about, and this should say bandwidth, I'm sorry. There is narrow and then there is narrow, right? So, you know, cheaper narrowband filters will be in the 12 nanometer kind of band pass. I'm talking about single filters here. Like an HA 12 nanometer, you could probably get pretty cheap. But as these, you know, bandwidths get smaller and smaller, the cost to manufacture these get higher and higher, and they're harder to make. That's why they're a lot more expensive. And here's kind of going back to the discussion that Mark brought up earlier. I found when I'm shooting mono that I with my 3 nanometer, I am especially across all three of the filters, I'm shooting half as long as I did with my 7 nanometer. So that tells me that the 3 nanometer is pulling out great detail that the 7 nanometer wasn't.
I
And
think
that
that's, I think that's what I meant to say before when I said it was grainy or no, or sharper. No, I think that's what you're saying is what I meant, is that it
Okay.
was more detail.
yeah, detail, right?
Yes.
Yeah. And that surprised me because everything I had read in Cloudy Nights and whatever says you got to shoot longer and longer, and I found that it just wasn't the case.
So Andy, do you have, I'm gonna go Mark Christensen on the meeting. Do you have where you match up pixel size with filter bandpass?
Not with the filter bandpass, but with I have matched up camera pixel size with my telescope to make sure it falls within the 1 to the 2 range.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
I haven't done it for bandpass at all, or bandwidth.
Okay.
I couldn't even tell you what that
I don't
meant.
even know if that's a consideration.
I don't know either.
So
Yeah. Okay.
okay, so on that line, what about bundling? Is that, or am I saying it right? I forget the term. Binding?
Binning, yeah.
Yeah, binning. I never do any binning.
Yeah, I don't either. I do drizzle though, depending on but that's post-processing stuff. But
Right.
anyway, that's a separate discussion. Lastly, we all know this, right? But there's really no substitute for dark skies. So I'm going to show you a picture of the Iris Nebula that I took from here in Batavia versus 4 hours in the Bortle 3 in Gladwin, Michigan. Right, so this is 8 hours with L Pro, so it's a light pollution filter, which I have to use here in Batavia. And it looks great, right? You capture some of the dust and whatnot. But under 4 hours, it was like 3 hours, 45 minutes in a Bortle 3 sky. The difference is just, and that's just with an IR cut filter, no light pollution filter at all. So the dust, what I love about it is the definition of the dust. It's not just brown blotches.
Yep.
It's, it's just, I don't know. I'm really captivated by cosmic dust. It just fascinates me. But yeah, so it's great that that we can, for those who want to, shoot narrowband from home and use light pollution filters from home, but there's no substitute for going to our dark sites. So, all right. So that's it. That's what I wanted to go over. Do we want to go back and discuss any particulars?
So
Well-
I think one of the things that for me around here, and I'll invoke the Ansel Adams angle of it. Black and white, there's nothing wrong with black and white. There's nothing wrong with black and white hydrogen alpha stuff. And it's great training for narrowband, for all the stuff we're talking about.
Yeah, yeah.
Because after you learn how to do that, which I spent years learning all that stuff. Then when I went into color and the narrowband, it was an easy step beyond that.
Yeah, you're right.
But hydrogen alpha, I got tremendous results from that.
So
Everything I wanted to think.
Say some more, Mark, because you're saying hydrogen alpha with what?
No,
What kind of camera?
oh, with the big, with the black and white camera.
Okay, all right. So just that filter.
Right, just the hydrogen alpha filter. And I was getting, that's how I went through the Milky Way with all that. Got the Heart and Soul Nebula, Orion Nebula, California Nebula, Horsehead, all that kind of stuff.
Mhm.
And it was great. Bubble Nebula, because you're getting results.
Yeah.
And it's good result. And it's something that you can process and take longer or shorter. And then all you do is add the other stuff and stack them together to get your other results. So, if I was going to recommend something to start off around here, like you showed the last two pictures, no doubt, but it's a lot of fun to get the results at home too, and learn how to do all this stuff.
Yeah.
And then when you go out, then you're ready to do what you're doing right now, what I've been doing out at Scott's and stuff, where you have a 4-hour sequence of imaging and you get some really good stuff. So
Yeah, no, it's not this one. Just I wanted to show an example of what Mark's talking about. So here's one that I did. This is HA on M33. Right, it's a galaxy. You're not supposed to be able to shoot HA, right? But it does. It has a hydrogen alpha clouds in it. But that's all I wanted to do.
but what you get from this, Andy, is that there are so many, this galaxy, they've actually got NGC and IC numbers for the hydrogen alpha
Right.
nebula in this galaxy.
Right.
So you're actually taking their Orion Nebula picture.
Yeah.
Of what's there in Orion Nebula.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Okay. So this is what I'm getting at, is that, if you wanted to start out with something and get some results right away, this is a good way to do it.
All right. Anything else you guys want to ask or talk or share or?
So one of the things is that under the hydrogen alpha doesn't bring out all the stars, right? It blocks a lot of stars. And so if you wanted to use that channel with red, green, blue, you've got to make some concessions in the processing, which I'm not sure how to do. That's how you have to do it in programs that I don't know and I don't have, but that's another consideration for that.
Right.
So now I have a proposal that I'm still haven't tried yet, but it's kind of like stacking in your brain. So when you use a visual filter, like I use the ultra high contrast or an O3 filter, whatever you want to use, something like that, and you look at a nebula, again, it blocks the stars out. So if you look at Orion Nebula with a filter and without a filter, the trapezium looks totally different. And with the filter, of course, you get the extended nebula and all that kind of good stuff. And you start to see some dark lanes. So I borrowed some binocular eyepiece. So what I'm going to try to do, hopefully at the next star party or whenever Orion gets high enough, I need something bright enough around here unless I go out to Scott's. But I want to put an ultra high contrast in one of the eyepieces and nothing in the other.
Wow. That's
Okay.
good.
And then see if your brain can combine the two. See what I'm getting at?
Yeah.
Yeah.
You have all the nebulosity, but the trapezium comes out.
Yeah.
That could be fascinating.
And then you try to drive home. I don't know if I'll make it home. Brain will be seeing all kinds of headlights.
Don't use the binocular, if you were driving home.
Oh man. But no, that thought came to me, I don't know, one night when I was reading up on the filters or something like that. I said, okay, let's try that. Or like on the Horsehead, because there's all kinds of stars around that.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then you throw the filter on there. I don't know. We'll see.
It's a really fascinating idea.
So I'm gonna try that with my 11-inch, and if it works, then I'll try it on the 15. See if it works on the 15-inch. Because I would think you need to gather enough light in the filter
Yeah,
eye. So we'll see.
yeah.
Yeah, going back to filters, I used to shoot black and white film with the red filter on the lens. And I mean, with the film, of course, it takes forever, but it seemed to work. I was getting some good contrast with it. But you have to take really, really long exposures, and so you're
Yeah.
guiding forever,
Mhm.
manual guiding forever.
Yeah.
Well, I'm sold on the technology of the filters and the go-to and the cool camera.
Yeah.
Those are the three things that really help us do this hobby right now.
Yeah, I think the cool camera is maybe the biggest factor in everything.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, what we used to do there would we'd build a box and put it around the camera and then throw dry ice in the box,
Right.
to cool the film. We did that with what we were doing one night up at the Racine Observatory. We're doing an eclipsing variable, and we had a photometer. Same thing there. This is the old days of the 70s, and the photometer threw off so much heat, so we had to again keep it cold so that when it took the reading of the eclipsing star, you had the same temperature at each data point. Otherwise, the graph runs off in one direction.
Yeah.
When it warmed up.
So I have a question for folks who are imaging. What is the next step that you want to get to in your imaging process?
Well, I think Greg and I want to throw a hydrogen alpha filter on the Revolution imager.
I want to take pictures like Andy with a lot less effort. So I don't know if I can do that, because that's just crazy. I don't think I've got it in me to do the 16 hours worth of imaging or whatever. I'm happy getting my results with 1 hour worth of effort.
You know what? That's what I love about our hobby, is you can find your happy place in so many different places. And and be happy with whatever output that makes you, brings joy to your life. I tell you what, I would never do as long as I do if it wasn't automated, though. There's no way I'd sit outside.
But that's the joy that you get out of the hobby at the moment,
yeah.
is putting that all together and making it happen, and going in and watching a football game while your thing is imaging.
So you lost the thrill of freezing your butt off? I don't understand that.
And mosquitoes in the summer, and
I still vividly remember nights sitting behind my laptop and watching the bottom part of my screen just kind of go away in the cold. But in 3 layers and 2 blankets around me, using backyard EOS.
yeah, but you remember
boy, backyard EOS. Wow.
You remember those nights, though, don't you?
Yeah.
Vividly, and I remember it with fondness.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
So Herman, I know next, he had talked before everybody got on. He's getting an ASI Air Plus. That's
Yeah. Got my little CGEM 25 mount that I want to get using again, because it's lightweight and carrying. Got a nice little tat to go on it. So
I kind of, speaking of the ASI mount, I think that one of the next meetings we should have is what you're supposed to do with the fit files to process them in Deep Sky Stacker, other than sacrifice a chicken in the backyard and pray. Because I haven't been able to do anything with any of those files to do any proper stacking. I've been stacking screenshots and cheating from, when you're looking at your tablet screen or your telephone screen, you're looking at an image of like a stack of 40 images or whatever it is, and you can take screenshots of that. And I'm stacking those in Sequitur, and that's how I'm trying to get my results out of the ASI Air, which I think is not right, right?
Well,
So
it's not that it's not right. It's maybe it's just not as great.
well, I'm not done yet. But the thing is, that's what I'm doing. And whenever I try putting those images in Deep Sky Stacker, I end up with a white image and I can't figure out how to get anything else out of it. I have no idea what I'm doing wrong. And I have used Deep Sky Stacker before because I did stack Comet Neowise with some frames, like 40 frames, 60 frames, with my Sony A7 back in 2020, whenever it was, and I was able to get something out of it then.
Yeah, it
I
was a
did
good
better
shot
with,
too.
well, thanks, but I did better with Sequitur though, actually, but I still got something out of Deep Sky Stacker.
So you
So
can't get TIFF files out of your camera?
not the ASI Air, no.
No.
It's a fit file or forget about it.
Mhm.
Unless you do these screenshots and it puts JPEGs on your local device, whether it's a tablet or a cell phone, whatever you're using to control the ASI Air, when you take these screenshots, that's your JPEG. There's no menu option to select any file format.
Yeah, I think
The default is fit and you have to be happy about it.
yeah, I think that's only with dedicated astronomy cameras. I think with that's not necessarily the case with DSLRs. I think they output the like Sony or not Sony, Canon would put out camera raw if you wanted.
Yeah, but I sort of would assume, since they're programming geniuses, that they could figure out how to put an option and whatever kind of conversion software they need to be able to save in raw and
Hmm.
fits or fit or whatever. You
Yeah.
only have fit, and if you can't make it work, you're stuck, or you're happy to stack screenshots of that images in Sequitur, and that's how I got the M31 image and the Pinwheel Galaxy image with my ASI Air. I didn't use the images that were stacked or that were saved on the device, the FITS images, and do it in Deep Sky Stacker like a real person that knew what they were doing would do. I did the rookie thing because I'm just doing the best I can with what little resources I have to be able to figure this stuff out. So, um, and it's still got a pretty good image from
Yeah,
the pinwheel.
yes.
So, that's why I'm saying I might be onto something with stacking those screenshots. It's not the same as making multiple copies of a single image because every time you save a subsequent frame, so when you go from 31 stacked frame image and you save a 31 stacked frame image, there's another randomized
Yeah,
background there.
Yeah, yeah.
And so as
So-
long as everything's randomized, it'll add up and subtract in a stacking program like Sequitur.
yeah. You just
So-
lose a little bit in the compression of JPEG, but
Yeah, I never noticed a difference anyway, frankly.
well, we could do that if we want for the next meeting.
I would personally, in fact, November 16 is my birthday. So if we do the meeting around my birthday, I'll consider it a birthday present to
Okay.
maybe help me out there.
Me write
'Cause
that
that's
down.
pretty frustrating.
November
Well, I
16th.
tell you what, we'll require is for you to upload your FITS files from one of those projects. And we'll.
Oh, I can
use
do it.
those. Yeah,
I've got them.
Okay.
And I could put them on a Google Drive somewhere, and
yeah.
that can be done.
Okay.
Okay, so I got it on my calendar, Wednesday, the 16th, Zoom meeting.
Happy birthday.
16th of November?
Yeah.
I'll
And,
have to tell
it's
my
2
wife.
Hey, it's 2 days after the regular meeting, so I'll be able to invite a whole bunch of people.
Yeah, I'll be on the farm that week, but yeah, I'll participate in that
Well,
one.
hopefully no one will hit me with a surprise birthday party. We can do it for the day after. So
That's
yeah,
okay. Yeah.
as far as I know, this is scheduled. I don't have anything for my birthday scheduled other than that. So
Okay.
yeah, it'd be great. And Ashley will be there, so that'll be good.
Hey, Andy, I got one more thing.
Yeah.
Does anyone use a self-guiding camera?
Yeah,
So I have the SBIG 8XE with the guide chip. So and this is a general thing that I went through is that so that picks off some of the light from the aperture, right? And for red, green, blue, picks up red, green, blue light. And so if you have a guide star out there that's that's a red, green, blue, right? It'll pick it up. But if you throw a narrow band filter in front of it, it could block out that star, especially a dim star. So that's a consideration.
Yeah.
So either you got to rotate the camera, which my setup I can't because it's fixed. The camera's fixed, or move. Then you got to move back and forth till you find it. What I found out though in one of the later versions of the SBIG software is you can do a dual view of the guide chip and the imaging chip. And it made life so easy when that was in there, so that maybe your object's not centered, but at least you know where a guide star it will be, and you can bring it into the guide chip.
Yeah, that's interesting. I think I've heard rumors like in the long term that's where all cameras will have that kind of technology.
Mm-hmm.
And the idea of having a guide scope with a guide camera will be old fashioned and won't be needed.
Well, there's a couple of issues with that. And again, speaking from my experience, when you have, and I hope the technology changes as well in the software. But what I had to do with the guide chip is that every time my 5-minute exposure was over, it closes the shutter and downloads the image, opens the shutter back up. You're not guiding for that 1 minute it's downloading, however long it's downloading, right? So we always had some drift in those images, a little bit, but it was there. And like I said, with the narrow band, if you can't rotate the camera, you really are stuck with it being fixed. But with the lighter weight cameras now, that's easier to do.
Yeah.
With that big SBIG and then with the focuser and all that, I had to basically get it fixed onto the, in the cradle and all that to get it done. Because when I went to the guide scope, then I didn't have to quit guiding when it downloaded. So I just programmed the thing, okay, give me 12 5-minute exposures, and it guided through the whole thing on a guide scope. So I quit using the guide chip.
Yeah, makes sense.
So that's a consideration as well. Even if the technology allows you to keep guiding or something, and if you're still going to have to go through a filter.
Yeah.
For the star. And
yeah, for sure. Yeah, that'd be interesting.
Yeah, I put my 80 millimeter telescope on it. I had a cheap department store Equatorial mount that I put a hard drive on it. And with Sharp Cap, I took an 1.5-hour exposure with that thing, and it didn't guide at all.
Oh yeah.
That's the beauty of having that, I tell you.
Well, thanks, Andy, for that presentation.
Yes, it's fine.
I'll just say one thing: the technology has improved with the filters over the last 10 years for sure.
Yeah. Even in the last 3 or 4, it's really skyrocketed.
Well, yeah, I like those dual and triple pass filters. That's pretty good.
Yeah.
I can actually use filters on my little Equinox telescope.
Yeah,
It does mess up its ability to see stars, depending on the kind of filter you got up there. So
Yeah.
but, kind of fascinating. Oh, by the way, I've got a presentation about the building of the Very Large Telescope by the guy who designed and built the Very Large Telescope. Is that something the club you think would be interested in?
Yeah. I
Sure.
think so.
It's a video.
sure.
Yeah, it's one of my bennies for belonging to iTelescope. I get these things like every 2 or 3 weeks. But that one was just fascinating for me, It's like
Yeah,
facing
that'd be
Mars
pretty good.
up there in Chile. Yeah,
Yeah.
Yeah,
I'll see what if I can get it. I've got it here on my computer. We'll give it a shot and maybe we can try it some night.
yeah.
So have you
Ashley,
guys
did you have
seen?
any- Did you have anything more from the contact we talked about? Ashley?
You're talking about the Astro
Yeah.
Fermi. He said he was going to reach out to the group and see who was available and what they would
Okay.
want to discuss.
Okay.
So,
We could do it any month, Sounds good.
mhm.
Okay, thanks, Andy.
All right. You're welcome.
Yes, well done.
Yeah, thanks, guys. Have a good night.
Good night.
Good night.
Good idea.
Let me stop recording.